Another thing about my fate, the fortune teller said my 8 characters was extremely strong. I was born at 9 a.m. on the 4th day of the 11th lunar month in 1993. She recited my bazi without hesitation. Ji Shi Howard, Gi Mao Day, Bing Shu month, Gi Yu year. According to the 4 pillars of destiny, I fell under the Gui, noble fate. What did noble mean? It meant my destiny contained official stars and was supported by financial fortune. My 4 pillars had no destructive formations, a sign of noble luck. The ancients believed that a person without killing stars in their fate would enjoy a life of wealth and honor. If born in times of chaos, they would become a military official. If born in times of peace, they would have great ambitions and success. Because of my strong bazi, the fortune teller guaranteed that my fate was clean. Wandering spirits, demons, or evil entities would not be able to follow or disturb me. And yet here I was, seeing a ghost. All those guarantees about my bright future had vanished in an instant. First, I never became a director. Right now, I was just a technician in a factory. If I was lucky enough to get promoted to team leader, that would already be a miracle. Second, I no longer believed in fortune-telling nonsense. My fate was mine to decide. That old woman was just scamming my mother for money. I let out a deep sigh and looked up, flashing an awkward smile at the nurse. She was busy arranging medicine cups on her tray, her head lowered. I couldn't see her face, only her petite frame and pale, slender hands. Looking closer, I noticed a name tag on her uniform. Jiang Thi Duong, emergency room nurse. So she was from an ethnic minority. That explained the faint herbal scent coming from her. Thank you for your help earlier. Sorry for the trouble. I spoke politely. She barely reacted, just slightly shifting her hands as she continued arranging the medicine boxes without looking up. Nurse Duong, are you just on duty for tonight? Or will you be here all week? I asked, trying to make casual conversation to ease my lingering fear. I'm on duty all week. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Then she picked up a cup, turned around to pour some water, and handed it to me. The sound of water trickling filled the room before she softly said, "Drink some water. Your friend won't wake up for a while. You must be exhausted." I quick took the cup and brought it to my lips. But the moment the liquid touched my mouth, a sharp, metallic, and rancid stench hit my nose. Not just metallic, it was foul. It smelled like half-clotted blood, like an unfinished bowl of raw blood pudding sitting in that cup. My throat clenched. Something surged up from my stomach, but I forced it down, refusing to vomit on the spot. I immediately put the cup down, blinking rapidly and pressing my lips together to suppress my thoughts. What the hell had they put in this for the patients? The smell was no different from cow intestines soaked in pig's blood. Damn it, I hated blood pudding. Not every patient liked this so-called delicacy. What if someone smelled it and threw up everything they had taken? Wouldn't all the medicine go to waste? Did these people even understand hygiene? If a simple cup of water smelled this bad, how could they guarantee the cleanliness of their surgical instruments? It took me a few seconds to steady my breathing. I still had the cup in my hand and turned to say something to the nurse, but she was gone. Now, I was the only one left in the room, standing there like an idiot. The door was slightly ajar. She must have left while I was distracted. Why did she leave in such a hurry? At least she could have stayed to chat a bit. Now that I was alone again, what if that ghost came back to mess with me? Come to think of it, I never got a clear look at her face. Maybe she was just shy, alone in a hospital room at night with a guy like me. She was probably embarrassed. I instinctively turned away, as if my brain knew that if I kept staring at Cuong's face any longer, his eyes would pierce right through me. My body moved on its own, as if commanded by my subconscious. I bolted out of the room, my mind racing. The first thing I thought of was finding the nurse on duty and telling them to check on my poor friend. As soon as I reached the hallway, I heard footsteps approaching. Like a drowning man clutching at straws, I immediately called out, "Nurse, is that you?" The footsteps grew louder, coming from behind me. I turned around. The last room at the end of the hallway was still lit, and a shadowy figure appeared along the corridor. As they stepped closer to my room, the light from inside illuminated them enough for me to see who it was. It was young woman in a nurse's uniform, holding a tray of medicine cups. Relief flooded through me, and I hurried toward her. "Thank God I found you!" "My friend just woke up. Please check on him. His arm is bleeding badly." I quickly pushed the door open. The nurse, heeding my urgent tone, followed me inside and walked straight to the hospital bed. I trailed behind her, still shaken, unable to bring myself to look directly at Cuong. "No, your friend hasn't woken up. Look again." She examined him for a moment before stepping aside. Only then did I dare to look. But where was the blood on the floor? Where was the unbandaged arm lying on the edge of the bed? Where were the wide-open eyes that had stared at me so intensely? I cautiously stepped closer to Cuong's bed. His eyes were still tightly shut, his face scrunched up in discomfort, his arm fully wrapped in bandages, and the floor completely clean. I had seen a ghost. Oh my God, I had actually seen a ghost. I stared at Cuong's sleeping face, my vision blurring as if I were on the verge of tears. What the hell was happening? Did some wandering spirit find me too bored and decide to play with me? No, I didn't need this. "This is your first time staying overnight at a hospital, isn't it? You're probably just too tense and imagining things." The nurse's voice was light, almost dismissive. I couldn't take my eyes off Cuong as I tried to process how I had let myself get so overwhelmed. Since birth, I had never known fear. Nothing had ever been able to truly scare me. I wasn't superstitious, but I had once accompanied my mother to see a fortune teller. She had insisted on having my fortune read as well. So I sat there blankly while the old woman pressed and prodded my hand. She told me I had a mole under my big toe. In the past, people called it the Emperor's Mole, meaning I was born under a lucky star. She even predicted that my future career would be incredibly bright, if not a company director, then at least the head of a security team. My parents could rest easy in their old age, knowing they could rely on me. Cough. Cuong suddenly let out a few coughs, snapping me out of my wandering thoughts. Damn it, it's all because of this unlucky bastard. Why did he have to get into an accident? When you wake up tomorrow, I'll make sure to teach you a lesson. I made that promise to myself, then checked the time on my phone, 12:35 a.m. When will morning come so I can get the hell out of this terrifying place? At 4 a.m., Cuong woke up. At that moment, I was sitting dazed in my chair, so lost in thought that I didn't even realize he had regained consciousness. After everything that had happened, my nerves were completely shot. The tension kept me from closing my eyes. What if I fell asleep and Cuong suddenly opened his eyes to glare at me again? Or worse, what if his arm started bleeding and I wasn't awake to stop it? He could just keep bleeding until he died. These thoughts replayed in my mind like a looping tape, warning me not to fall asleep. Just one moment of carelessness, and who knows what kind of horror could unfold. In reality, I dozed off twice, almost falling out of my chair each time. Sitting still in a silent place like this while forcing myself to stay awake felt like torture. I had stretched 10 times, walked around the room 6 times, stared out the door 4 times, counted the cars in the hospital yard twice, and just a moment ago, I even counted how many geckos were clinging to the ceiling. Why was I staring at the ceiling so intently? Ever since the nurse left, I had this eerie feeling that someone, somewhere, not exactly in this room but nearby, was watching me. I'm not an overly sensitive person, but if someone is staring at me, I can always tell. It's a kind of intuition that only single people develop. Trying to find a logical explanation to satisfy my instincts was proving difficult. I tried to push the thought away and distract myself with something more realistic or entertaining. But it was no use. My gut feeling screamed at me. Someone is watching you! Men? Jesus! I jolted, my heart skipping a beat. Cuong's raspy voice had never sounded so damn familiar. After the emotional moment, I quickly turned back to look at my poor friend. He was awake, his eyes barely open, his lips slightly moving, and his nostrils flaring as he breathed. His face was still scrunched up, probably because calling out earlier had drained a lot of his energy. I immediately said, "You're awake. That's good. No need to talk too much, or it might affect your stitches. I understand your situation. Just be more careful next time. Luckily, someone got you to the hospital." Hearing me mention the accident, Cuong blinked twice before glancing at me with a troubled look. What was there to be troubled about? If he had been careless and caused the accident himself, then it was his own fault. If someone else had hit him, he could only blame bad luck. With his limbs stitched up like this, moving around would be a real hassle. Maybe this would scare him enough to never go out late at night again. Lesson learned. I saw a ghost. Huh? The nurse said his head wasn't injured, so why was he suddenly talking nonsense? Maybe the pain was making him delirious. Earlier, while he was asleep, he had shouted something about get out of the way and stop. Maybe he still hadn't fully recovered. I tried to sound sympathetic, searching for some comforting words. It's just a late night ride. You were probably seeing things. I just saw a ghost too, right here in this room. Don't overthink it. Just rest until morning. I'll talk to the supervisor and get you a break. Don't worry. Do you know why I had the accident? They said you crashed into the median on Del Kai. What exactly happened? No idea. By the time I got here, you were already lying in bed. I was trying to avoid someone on the road. After saying that, Cuong fell silent. Avoiding someone? How did he end up crashing into the median then? That road was wide enough for 3 motorbikes and a car to ride side by side. And at night, there were barely any people around. Why would he need to swerve so hard? Were you drunk? If you don't believe me, I don't know what else to say. How am I supposed to believe that? I've ridden on Del Kai countless times. It's not narrow enough for you to crash into the median. That person was walking against traffic, but Cuong suddenly frowned, his voice hesitant, as if there was something more he hadn't said. Walking against traffic? That should have made it easier to avoid them. He could have seen them coming and slowed down. If they were swerving unpredictably, the worst-case scenario was stopping and letting them pass. No need to fight over the road. Avoiding trouble is always best. Cuong should understand that better than anyone. But they weren't walking. They weren't running either. I don't even understand. What do you mean? I was riding normally when I suddenly saw someone walking on the road. They were coming toward me. At first, I thought they were over 100 meters away. But before I could slow down, they were already standing right in front of my headlights. And you told them to get out of the way, right? Yeah, I yelled for them to move, but they ignored me. Instead, they rushed straight toward my bike. Panicked, I screamed for them to stop. But in less than 3 seconds, they were already right in front of me. Since I was still going 40 kilometers per hour, I swerved, and that's how I crashed into the median. You were still conscious after that, right? Cuong fell silent again. His face paled noticeably. His story was giving me chills. Who in their right mind would run straight into an oncoming motorbike? Only a lunatic, or something worse. I didn't see them anymore. You mean, when you looked back, they were gone? Yeah, it was just me lying on the road. Now it was my turn to go silent. Do you believe me? Cuong asked suddenly, his face sincere, as if trying to force me to accept what he had just said. How could I believe it? I wasn't there when the accident happened. I wasn't him, and I wasn't that mysterious figure walking against traffic. How could I be sure? But Cuong wasn't the type to make excuses. If he messed up, he would take responsibility. If he wanted to lie, he could have come up with something much more reasonable. There was no need to say something so outlandish. I don't know. Are you absolutely sure there was someone walking toward you? I'm sure. That stretch of road has a curve, so I was paying close attention. Riding at night on a mountain pass isn't easy. That made sense. Del Kai wasn't a residential road. It cut through a hill, connecting the industrial zone to the nearby villages. It wasn't a winding, treacherous path, but it was deserted. The later it got, the emptier it became. I was certain that between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m., no vehicles ever passed through there. And yet, someone was walking there at 9 p.m.? That was strange, but what was done was done. Whether it was a ghost or not, Cuong didn't die. People say ghosts appear to take a soul as a substitute for theirs. If he saw one but survived, then there was nothing left to fear. The important thing now was for him to rest and recover. There was no need to dwell on this any further. What's past is past. All right, stop thinking about it. What matters is that you're safe. How are you feeling? Does your leg still hurt? I'll call the nurse to check on you. Cuong just nodded, still lost in thought about the accident. I told him to wait while I went to find the nurse.